Long before hospitals existed, birth was a sacred mystery. We are about to explore the powerful traditional birth rituals from ancient civilizations, a journey into the primal wisdom that guided the first moments of life. You will discover how our ancestors used everything from celestial timing to potent herbs to navigate the profound danger and wonder of childbirth. We will uncover why Egyptian mothers gave birth in rooms purified with sacred incense and what Mayan midwives knew about the power of a simple squatting posture. This exploration offers a profound connection to the universal human story, revealing how the deepest fears and greatest hopes of parents have echoed across millennia. What part of this ancient wisdom do you think we have forgotten today? Inside the warm, incense-heavy air of an Egyptian mammoth or birth house, the physical world met the spiritual. This was far more than just a room. It was a meticulously prepared sanctuary, its walls washed with natron salt and its corners filled with the sacred smoke of Kai-Fi incense, all designed to create a bubble of divine protection. The ancient Egyptians understood that bringing a new soul into the world made both mother and child intensely vulnerable, not just to physical dangers but to unseen malevolent forces. Every action was a ritual of purification. Before the birth even began, the mother would be washed with water from the Nile, considered the lifeblood of the gods, and anointed with fragrant oils. Protective amulets, often depicting the fearsome yet benevolent hippo goddess Taweret or the dwarf god Bes, were placed around the room and on the mother herself. These were not mere decorations, they were spiritual shields charged with the power to repel the chaotic forces of evil. Midwives, acting as both medical practitioners and priestesses, would recite specific spells from texts like the Papyrus Ebers, their voices weaving a tapestry of magic and medicine. Can you feel the profound anxiety behind this meticulous preparation? The desire for a clean, safe space reveals a universal human fear, the terror of something going wrong in a moment of ultimate fragility. This sacred environment was not meant to be empty, however. It was a stage set for divine intervention, inviting powerful protectors to witness the miracle of life. The voices chanting for the goddess Ninhursag were not just hopeful wishes. They were a direct summons, a desperate plea for a powerful, divine presence to enter the room. In the dusty plains of Mesopotamia, birth was a cosmic event, a fragile human process unfolding under the watchful eyes of gods and demons. The mother's pain was not merely a physical trial. It was a sign that the goddess of the womb was at work, and she needed to be properly appeased. This was a transaction of faith. Families would present offerings of sweet dates and jars of beer, not as casual gifts, but as potent symbols of fertility and life, meant to gain the favor of the divine. But they were not just calling for help, they were also actively warding off evil. Clay figurines of the terrifying demon Lamashtu, who was believed to snatch newborns, were carefully crafted only to be broken and buried at the doorstep. This was a spiritual trap, a decoy to confuse and capture any malevolent force before it could cross the threshold. Can you sense the profound duality in their beliefs? They personified creation itself as a goddess, viewing the agonizing, messy process of birth as a sacred drama directed by celestial powers. This need for a tangible link to the divine went even further. A priestess might gently place a stone cylinder seal carved with a birth scene directly onto the mother's abdomen. This was not a massage tool. It was a sacred object, a conduit. The imagery pressed against her skin was a magical command, a continuous prayer for the body to open as smoothly as the scene depicted on the stone. The entire ritual, from the chants to the buried demons, reveals a culture that saw no separation between the physical and the spiritual realms. And if the gods were such active participants, then the people who mediated that relationship, the ones who knew the correct chants and the proper rituals, held a position of immense power and respect. The circle of women surrounding the laboring mother in ancient Greece was a living network of knowledge and strength. An experienced Maya, the midwife, stood at its center, her voice calm and her hands sure as she directed the female relatives. One woman might be crushing herbs into a soothing tea, while another braced the mother's back during a powerful contraction. This was not a chaotic gathering but a highly organized ritual, a sacred space where men were almost entirely absent. Birth was firmly and unequivocally a woman's domain, a tradition where critical knowledge about the body, pain, and life itself was passed orally from grandmothers to mothers, and from seasoned midwives to their apprentices. The Greek physician Soranus, in his writings, laid out the surprisingly rigorous qualifications for a midwife. She was expected to be literate, of sound mind, and sober, possessing a formidable memory for countless herbal remedies and manual techniques. Her responsibilities were vast. She performed internal examinations to assess the baby's position, guided the mother on a specially designed birth stool that used gravity to aid delivery, and provided meticulous aftercare, anointing the newborn with protective oils and swaddling it securely. But perhaps the most compelling figure from this era is the legendary Agnotis of Athens. The story goes that she cut her hair and donned male attire to study medicine in Alexandria, a field forbidden to women. Returning to Athens as a physician, she was only able to reveal her true identity to her female patients, who trusted her implicitly. She was eventually put on trial for her deception, only to be defended by the very women of the city she had served, forcing the courts to change the law. Why did so many cultures insist on this female-only sanctum? It was a space of raw vulnerability and powerful empathy, a place where the secret language of the female body was understood without explanation. Within these circles, a specific, practical wisdom was preserved and refined, a wisdom deeply rooted in the healing power of the earth itself. The midwife's hands moved with a quiet certainty, crushing the dark root of Dong Quai into a simmering pot. In that Han Dynasty household, the steam carrying the scents of ginger and angelica root was more than just medicine. It was a carefully balanced formula intended to fortify the mother's chi, her vital life force, and gently coax her body through the arduous work of labor. This was not guesswork. It was a sophisticated system of healing, born from centuries of observing how plants interacted with the human body. Ancient texts like the Shenong Bencao Jing did not merely list herbs. They catalogued their souls, detailing their temperature, their taste, and their specific affinity for different organs and conditions. Blue cohosh was known to encourage sluggish contractions, while black haw could calm an overactive uterus. These powerful botanicals were never administered carelessly. Their preparation was a ritual in itself, often timed to the phases of the moon or favorable astrological signs, and frequently blended with honey or rice wine to make the potent brews more palatable for an exhausted mother. Can you fathom the immense collective knowledge, the generations of observation and careful note-taking that went into creating this early pharmacy? They learned which plant could start a stalled labor and which one could stop a dangerous hemorrhage, all without a single microscope or clinical trial. This wisdom was sometimes startlingly precise. In ancient Egypt, midwives applied a warm poultice of coriander and fenugreek directly to the mother's abdomen, a practice modern science has since validated, confirming these common spices contain compounds that can stimulate uterine muscles. The journey from simply eating a plant to understanding its precise physiological effect on a woman in labor represents one of humanity's greatest and most overlooked intellectual achievements. But these herbal allies were only one part of the physical strategy. Guiding the mother's body into specific, purposeful positions was considered equally vital to a safe delivery. The Mayan midwife knew the body was not meant to lie flat. Guiding the mother into a deep squat over a sturdy stool, she watched as gravity began its silent, steady work. This was not a random choice. It was a deliberate application of physics, an understanding that an upright posture could widen the pelvic outlet by as much as 30% compared to lying down. Her hands, skilled and certain, applied firm pressure to the mother's lower back and abdomen, manually coaxing the baby into the optimal position for its journey. They were manipulating anatomy with an empirical wisdom that modern medicine would only later codify. Centuries away and across a sea, an Egyptian midwife referenced the Ebers papyrus, her fingers tracing the baby's position through the taut skin of the mother's belly. The maneuvers she performed, feeling for the hard roundness of the head or the softer curve of the buttocks, were strikingly similar to the Leopold maneuvers still taught in medical schools today. This was a shared global intuition. From the kneeling benches used in ancient China to the ropes hung from beams for standing support in countless cultures, the principle was universal. The body was designed to be active, to move, to find the angle that made the impossible possible. The beautifully carved birthing chair preserved in a Pompeii fresco was not a luxury item. It was a tool of profound efficiency, its crescent opening offering both physical support for the mother and crucial access for the midwife. Why did we ever move away from this fundamental knowledge? These postures speak to an innate bodily wisdom we are only now rediscovering, a reminder that sometimes the most advanced solution is also the most natural one. Yet, even as the body was engaged in this physical dance, the mind required its own sustenance, its own form of strength to navigate the trial. The resonant hum of a Vedic mantra does more than just fill the air. In that darkened room, the sacred syllable Om was believed to vibrate at the very frequency of creation, a sonic blanket meant to soothe the mother's racing heart and ease her physical suffering. This was not mere background noise. It was a deliberate, ancient form of sound healing, a universal recognition that specific auditory frequencies could alter human consciousness, quiet fear, and summon protective energies into the space. The ancient Indian text known as the Atharva Veda contains entire hymns dedicated solely to childbirth, powerful verses chanted by family or priests to form a spiritual shield around mother and baby, warding off evil influences and pleading for a swift, safe passage. But this practice echoed far beyond India. In some Native American traditions, while the women worked inside the birth lodge, the father would stand vigil outside, singing his personal medicine song. His voice was not a distraction. It was a spiritual anchor, a constant, familiar thread of love and strength woven through the walls for his laboring partner to grasp onto. Why does sound remain such a profound tool for managing pain and anxiety, even today? The rhythmic beat of a drum can mimic a calming heartbeat, while the sustained tone of a flute can guide the breath into a slower, deeper pattern. These sounds were not random. They were carefully chosen for their vibrational quality, each one a key intended to unlock a specific state of peace and focus, harmonizing the mother's internal chaos with a greater external order. And very often, this powerful auditory landscape was seamlessly woven together with another potent sensory element, the strategic and purposeful use of scent. The air in a Roman domus was thick with the sacred smoke of frankincense and myrrh. These were not common household scents, but precious commodities, burned during labor to do far more than simply smell pleasant. The Romans understood scent as a powerful force, one that could purify the physical air of miasmas, calm a mother's frantic nerves, and create a tangible bridge to the divine, inviting benevolent spirits into the birthing space. This was early aromatherapy, a deliberate strategy to influence both the body and the soul. The renowned Greek physician Dioscorides documented this wisdom in his vast work, De Materia Medica, prescribing lavender oil to be gently massaged into the skin to ease muscular tension and invite a state of deep relaxation for a woman in labor. Specific potent blends were reserved exclusively for this sacred event. A prized Cypriot mixture, for instance, combined the soothing essence of rose, the precious spice saffron, and the lees of wine into a fragrant paste that would be carefully applied to the mother's temples and wrists. The very act of anointing these pulse points turned the mother into a living censer, carrying the protective and calming fragrance with her through every contraction. Archaeological proof of this ritual's importance was unearthed in Bronze Age Crete, where excavations of rooms identified as birthing chambers revealed specialized incense burners, their design meant for the precise and sacred task of filling the room with smoke. How did the ancient world so intuitively grasp the profound link between our sense of smell and our emotional state? They recognized that a distinctive fragrance could instantly shift a mood, trigger a memory of safety, or signal to the mind that this was a protected, holy space. This carefully scented atmosphere was rarely an isolated practice, however. It was almost always paired with another powerful element: the deliberate placement of symbolic objects believed to hold their own unique magic. That small carved hippo goddess hanging from a mother's neck was far more than an ornament. Her gaping mouth and fearsome form were a deliberate choice, a spiritual scarecrow meant to terrify any demonic force that dared approach the vulnerable mother and child. This reliance on symbolic objects was a universal language of protection, a tangible way to build a fortress of faith when the outcome of birth was so uncertain. In the shadow of Mesopotamian ziggurats, a pregnant woman might have worn a hematite cylinder seal, its surface intricately carved with the powerful, winged lamassu. As her fingers traced the divine image, she was not just feeling cool stone. She was reinforcing a spiritual connection, believing the very essence of the protective deity was sealed within the object, ensuring her own safe passage. These talismans were not chosen at random. The materials themselves were believed to hold innate power. Gleaming jet was thought to absorb negative energy. Warm amber was seen as solidified sunlight with purifying qualities, and red coral, with its blood-like hue, was a potent symbol of life and vitality, worn to prevent hemorrhage. In the heart of a Roman household, one might find a small, gleaming fascinum, a phallic amulet of bronze or gold, hung proudly in the birthing chamber. To modern eyes it might seem strange, but to the Romans it was a powerful, apotropaic symbol, its blatant imagery intended to distract and ward off the envious evil eye, a malevolent gaze they believed could cause sudden harm or death. Can you feel the profound psychological comfort these objects provided? In an era of staggering maternal and infant mortality, holding a smooth, familiar amulet, perhaps one worn by your own mother and grandmother, offered a concrete point of focus for hope. It was a way to grasp a sliver of control in a process ruled by immense, unseen forces. This deep-seated need for security extended beyond the physical space and into the very fabric of time itself, as our ancestors looked to the heavens for their next layer of protection. The celestial map was not a distant abstraction but a direct instruction manual for life itself. An astrologer in ancient Babylon, his fingers tracing the paths of planets on a clay tablet, was not merely predicting the future. He was performing a vital service for an expectant family, calculating the most auspicious moment for a birth to occur. In a world governed by the perceived will of the gods, the specific alignment of stars and planets at the moment of a child's first breath was believed to imprint upon their soul, dictating everything from their future profession to the very length of their life. This was a profound expression of a connected cosmos where human destiny was written in the sky. The great scholar Claudius Ptolemy, in his foundational work the Tetrabiblos, dedicated entire chapters to this practice. He advised that a child born with the benevolent planet Jupiter or the loving Venus in a dominant, favorable position was guaranteed a fortunate and prosperous journey through life. But this cosmic influence was not always gentle. If Mars, the fiery red planet of conflict, was ascendant, it might foretell a destiny filled with struggle and aggression. This belief created an immense psychological weight for parents. How must it have felt to know your child's entire life was supposedly predetermined by celestial forces beyond your control? The moon, that closest and most visible celestial body, held a special, almost visceral power. From the Celtic midwives of Europe to the sage physicians of the Han dynasty, a widespread belief persisted that the full moon's gravitational pull could not only command the tides but also hasten the breaking of amniotic waters and strengthen the contractions of labor. This was not seen as a mere coincidence but as a fundamental synchronization of the human body with the rhythm of the universe, and if the stars were truly against you, all was not lost. A child born under an ominous constellation like the baleful Eye of Sirius might be given a deliberately humble name to confuse the evil spirits, or a specific protective ritual involving fire or water would be performed to cleanse them of negative astral influences. This ancient desire to align a birth with a benevolent cosmic order, to find a pattern in the chaos, mirrors our own modern search for control. We may not consult star charts, but we meticulously track due dates, schedule inductions, and create birth plans, all in an attempt to impose our own kind of order on the beautiful, terrifying uncertainty of bringing a new life into the world. This meticulous attention to timing, however, extended far beyond the stars and into the very practical, minute-by-minute management of the labor itself. The placenta was never discarded as waste. It was treated as a sacred sibling to the newborn, a physical echo of the child's own spirit that demanded careful, ritualistic handling. In ancient Japan, a family might have carried out a quiet, solemn ceremony, burying the placenta deep beneath the foundation of their home. This was not a casual act of disposal. It was a powerful act of spiritual tethering, physically anchoring the child's soul to the land of their ancestors, ensuring they would always be connected to their lineage and homeland, no matter how far they might someday travel. This profound reverence for the afterbirth was a global phenomenon. The Maya, for instance, saw the placenta as a reservoir of potent life force. They would carefully dry it under the sun, grind it into a fine powder, and store it for future use. This powder was then incorporated into medicinal teas or poultices, administered to the child during times of sickness. They believed the placenta, which had sustained the baby in the womb, retained a unique, protective essence that could continue to fortify the child throughout their life. Why did so many cultures view this temporary organ with such awe? It represented a tangible, physical link to the mystery of creation itself, the very substance that had nurtured a new soul. The ritual significance extended to the moment the umbilical cord was cut. This was never a purely clinical snip. Among some Viking communities, the ceremony was a powerful declaration of a child's future. For a boy, the cord was laid upon his father's shield and severed with a blade, a symbolic act welcoming him into the world of warriors and protectors. For a girl, the cord was placed upon a distaff, a tool used in spinning wool, foreshadowing her future role in managing the household and its crafts. Even the Romans understood the symbolic weight of this moment. The natural historian Pliny the Elder wrote that the umbilical cord of a child destined for leadership should be preserved in a small, precious box, kept as a sacred token of the greatness they were fated to achieve. This universal, meticulous care given to the physical remnants of birth reveals a deep understanding that the body's journey into the world was only one part of the story. The spirit required its own, equally careful, guidance and protection. That small iron knife slid beneath the birthing bed in a Norse longhouse was more than a tool. It was a spiritual weapon, a deliberate barrier forged from a substance that trolls and dark elves were said to fear. This pervasive, global anxiety about invisible forces reveals a profound truth about the ancient perception of birth. It was not merely a biological event, but a dangerous liminal state, a threshold where the mother and newborn, suspended between worlds, were believed to be intensely vulnerable to supernatural predation. This fear gave rise to a stunning variety of apotropaic practices, rituals designed specifically to turn away evil. In Slavic villages, as a mother's labor began, a deliberate, quiet ritual would unfold throughout the household. Every single knot on clothing, on sacks of grain, and on curtains was meticulously untied. Every door and chest was unlocked. This was a powerful act of sympathetic magic, a belief that by physically opening every passage and loosening every binding in the home, they could symbolically ensure the mother's body would open freely and the baby's path would remain unbound. Can you sense the profound, tangible comfort found in these simple, deliberate actions? They were a way to exert control in a situation filled with terrifying unknowns. The color red, vibrant and unmistakable, became a nearly universal shield. From the silk threads tied around the wrists of newborns in China to the crimson ribbons woven into the cradles of Eastern Europe, this color was consistently chosen for its potent symbolic power. It represented blood, life, vitality, and was believed to be so visually potent that it could blind or confuse malevolent spirits, causing them to look away. Even powerful deities were not always benevolent. The Aztecs held a complex reverence for Cihuacotl, the serpent goddess of motherhood and midwifery, who could also bring terrible misfortune during childbirth. To placate her fearsome nature and frighten her away, a small, sharp knife made of obsidian, a stone believed to hold sacred power, was placed beside the laboring mother. This was not an invitation but a warning, a display of spiritual force. Why did this fear of the invisible so deeply saturate the birth experience across the globe? It reflects a fundamental human need to personify the dangers they could not see or understand. A sudden hemorrhage, a fever, a stillbirth, these tragedies were given a name and a form, a demon or a displeased goddess, and once named, they could be ritually confronted and with hope defeated. Once the immediate, palpable danger of labor had passed and the unseen threats were symbolically warded off, the delicate work of healing and weaving a new soul into the fabric of the family and community could truly begin. The door to the seclusion hut remained closed, sealing the new mother and her infant in a world of quiet intimacy. For 21 days in traditional Korea, this was the sacred space of Samchalil, a practice echoed in countless forms across the ancient world. Inside, the mother was not isolated but enveloped in care, her every need met by a circle of female relatives who brought her steaming bowls of myeokguk, a rich seaweed soup packed with iron and calcium to rebuild her strength and support breastfeeding. This was not a punishment or an illness, but a recognized vital stage of healing. The Romans observed the dies lustricus, a period of purification before a baby was officially named, while the Jewish tradition of niddah provided a similar framework of separation. The universal wisdom was clear. the immense physical and spiritual effort of birth required a corresponding period of dedicated recovery. How did these enforced periods of rest contribute to long-term maternal health in societies without modern medical support? They were a brilliant preventative strategy. By mandating rest, communities were actively preventing postpartum hemorrhages, combating exhaustion that could lead to infection, and ensuring the mother received the specific nutrients her body desperately needed to repair itself. This was proactive medicine in its purest form. In many West African traditions, this care included a daily, full-body massage with shea butter or palm oil. An elder woman would use firm, practiced strokes to help the mother's organs, particularly her uterus, shift back into place, a physical therapy that reduced pain and accelerated healing. This lying-in period was also a profound psychological transition. Shielded from the demands of the outside world, the mother could focus entirely on the new person in her arms. The rhythmic cycle of feeding and sleeping, undisturbed by other chores, wove an unbreakable bond between them. This quiet, protected time was the essential foundation upon which the child's official welcome into the community would later be built, a welcome often marked by one of the most significant and universal of all human rituals. The solemn weight of a father's hands as he lifted his newborn from the cool earth of a Roman home was a moment of profound transformation. On the dies lustricus, the 9th day for a son or the 8th for a daughter, the period of seclusion ended with this powerful ritual of acceptance. This was not a casual picking up of a baby. It was the formal act of tola liberos to raise the child, a public declaration by the paterfamilias that this new life was recognized, wanted, and legally integrated into the family line. The name he then bestowed, the prenomen, was far more than a simple label. It was the child's first piece of social identity, a direct link to their ancestors and a claim to their place in the world. This careful timing of the ceremony was itself a form of protective magic, a waiting period to ensure the infant was strong enough to survive before its spirit was fully anchored to a name and a destiny. Why did they wait so many days? They understood that the fragile thread of life could easily snap, and to name a child too soon was to risk a devastating spiritual loss if the infant did not live. Across the ancient world, the selection of a name was treated with the gravity of a sacred science. It was never a matter of mere preference. A name was a vessel for a life, a whispered prayer that would be called out thousands of times, each utterance reinforcing its power. Among the Norse, the practice of naming a child after a recently departed grandparent was a profound act of ancestral reincarnation. They believed that by bestowing the name, they were inviting the qualities and the honor of that beloved relative to live on in the new generation, weaving the child's destiny directly into the family's enduring saga. In the Vedic traditions of India, the Namakarana ceremony was an elaborate spiritual event. A priest would consult intricate astrological charts to determine the most auspicious syllables for the child's name, often based on the precise position of the moon at their birth. The chosen name was then whispered softly into the infant's ear by the father, making it the very first sacred sound to enter the child's consciousness, a vibrational seed planted to guide their path. Can you feel the immense responsibility our ancestors felt when choosing a name? They were not just picking something that sounded pleasant. They were attempting to craft a fate, to arm the child with a sound that would attract good fortune and embody strength. This profound act of naming, of weaving a new soul into the social fabric, was almost always followed by a final, physical affirmation of the child's vitality and place in the world. The newborn's first encounter with water was never a simple wash. In the golden light of an Egyptian home, the midwife would carefully lower the infant into a small basin. its water milky with dissolved natron salt and strewn with the delicate petals of the blue lotus. This was not a bath for cleanliness, but a baptism into existence. The natron, the same salt used to preserve the bodies of pharaohs for eternity, now purified the child for the journey of life, while the lotus flower, which closes each night and rises anew from the water at dawn, was a potent emblem of rebirth. As the water touched the baby's skin, it was believed to spiritually wash away the last traces of the sacred, shadowy world of the womb, formally welcoming the child into the realm of the living. The ritual culminated in a gentle anointing with precious cedar oil, its sharp, clean scent marking the infant as protected and consecrated. Can you sense the profound symbolism in every element? They were using the most fundamental substance, water, to orchestrate a spiritual transition. This symbolic power of the first bath echoed across the ancient world, though the ingredients varied dramatically. In ancient Greece, a startling practice involved bathing the newborn in undiluted wine, a ritual believed to harden the child's skin and fortify their spirit against future weakness. The physician Soranus would later question the harshness of this custom, advising instead a gentle wash with warm salt water and olive oil, showing an early shift towards a more physiological understanding of infant care. But the act of bathing was always about more than the liquid itself. It was about the hands that performed it and the words that were spoken. A respected elder or the midwife herself would typically administer this first bath, her movements slow and deliberate as she recited prayers or blessings over the child, weaving a tapestry of protection and hope with every pass of the cloth. Among the Maori of New Zealand, this connection between the child, the water, and the earth was made beautifully explicit. The wenua, or placenta, was traditionally buried in a significant place, and the water from the baby's first wash was then poured gently over that same spot. This created a powerful, circular ritual, symbolically returning the child's essence to the land of their ancestors, binding them to their home and heritage through the medium of water. Why has water, across thousands of years and countless cultures, consistently served as this universal medium of transformation? It represents the ultimate boundary between worlds, the fluid void from which life emerges and to which it symbolically returns for renewal. Once the child was cleansed and anointed, their physical needs immediately came to the fore, with the first meal serving as the next critical ritual in securing their fragile life. The newborn's first meal was a moment charged with spiritual significance. In the lamplight of a Mesopotamian household, a carefully chosen wet nurse would be led before the family, her diet and temperament scrutinized as thoroughly as her lineage. This was not a simple hiring process, but a ceremonial presentation, a vital selection to ensure the infant received not just nourishment, but moral character through her milk. As the baby was guided to her breast, a priest or midwife would recite incantations, their words weaving a protective charm around the act itself, intended to purify the milk of any lurking malevolence and transform it into a sacred, life-giving elixir. Across cultures, the very substance of this first feeding, the thick, golden colostrum, became a subject of intense debate and ritual. The Egyptians, with their characteristically practical wisdom, documented in texts like the Kahan papyrus that the newborn must be put to the breast immediately. They seemed to intuitively understand what science would later confirm, that this first milk was a powerhouse of antibodies and vital nutrients, the perfect food to seal a baby's fragile defenses. Yet in stark contrast, some Hellenistic communities viewed colostrum with deep suspicion, believing it was stale, impure, or even too potent for a newborn's delicate system. They would instead discard it, offering the infant tiny amounts of honey or clarified butter for the first few days, waiting for the thinner, whiter, mature milk to arrive. How many infants were lost to dehydration or infection because of this well-intentioned but dangerous cultural belief? This divergence reveals a painful truth, where tradition could sometimes tragically override observable benefit. The sacred nature of milk extended beyond mere consumption. In the highlands of pre-Columbian America, a new mother might express a few precious drops of her first milk onto a specific smooth stone, an altar to the earth goddess. This small offering was a prayer of gratitude for the abundance of her own body and a plea for the goddess to continue blessing her child with health and strength. The line between physical sustenance and spiritual sustenance was beautifully blurred, the mother's body itself becoming a temple. A family in ancient Carthage would carefully place a small terracotta figurine, shaped like a child, within the sacred precinct of a Tophet. This was not a toy, it was a votive offering, a physical representation of their newborn, given to the powerful deities Tanit and Baal Hammon. In that single, solemn act, they were trading something of tangible value for something infinitely more precious, their infant's health and long life. This universal impulse to give a gift to the divine reveals a profound anxiety, a desperate need to secure a fragile future through a transaction of faith. The nature of the offering itself speaks volumes about what a culture held most sacred. In Vedic India, moments after the birth, the Jatakama ceremony involved touching the newborn's lips with a tiny amount of ghee and honey from a golden spoon. This was the baby's first taste of the world, a symbolic offering of sweetness, purity, and spiritual illumination, intended to bless its entire life's journey. The gold was not for show, it was a metal of the gods, a conduit for divine essence. Can you feel the hope embedded in that first sacred taste? They were not just feeding a body, they were anointing a soul. More substantial sacrifices, while rarer, carried even greater weight. In ancient Greece, a family might sacrifice a lamb to Artemis, the fierce protector of women and children. The life of the animal was given in exchange for the life and protection of the mother and her baby, a stark reminder of the high stakes involved. Even in joyful celebrations, the ritual of offering remained central. At a Chinese red egg and ginger party, held to mark the baby's first month of survival, vibrant red eggs and ginger were presented not only to guests but also to the family's ancestors. This was a formal introduction, a way to weave the new soul into the ancestral tapestry and actively seek the blessings of those who had come before. Why did these rituals so often involve food, precious metals, or even life itself? They were giving the gods a taste of what humanity valued most: sustenance, wealth, and vitality, in the fervent hope that the divine would, in turn, protect those very things for the child. This deep, personal act of devotion, however, was almost always just one part of a much larger communal welcome. The rhythm of the drums was a heartbeat for the entire village, calling everyone to witness the outdooring of a new Akan child. Under the open sky, the infant was lifted high for the community to see, a formal declaration that this new person belonged not just to a family, but to the people as a whole. This was the child's first true breath of social life, an introduction to the world of ancestors, elders, and future allies. The shared feast that followed was far more than a meal. It was a powerful act of weaving, threading the newborn's life into the resilient social fabric of the tribe. Every person who ate from the communal dish accepted a tacit responsibility, a promise to watch over, teach, and protect this child as it grew. Can you hear the echoes of this ancient social contract in our own modern baby showers and christenings? We still gather to share food and gifts, performing a quieter version of this same communal vow. In ancient Rome, this binding of the social and the sacred was equally explicit. The Lectistonium feast held after the naming day was a spectacular event. Couches were arranged in the family's atrium not for guests, but for the statues of the gods themselves. Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva were treated as honored dinner attendees, with platters of food placed reverently before them. By feasting in the presence of the divine, the Romans were ensuring the gods themselves witnessed and blessed the child's entry into the community. The very foods served at these celebrations were chosen with deep symbolic care. Ground foods like eggs, lentils, and certain grains appeared across cultures from China to the Mediterranean. Their circular shape was a silent prayer for the child's life, a hope for a complete, unbroken cycle of health and prosperity, a journey that would return to its beginnings with wisdom and grace. This physical act of communal care was perhaps most touching among the Inuit. During a celebration, the newborn would be gently passed from one set of hands to another around the circle. Each person, upon holding the child, would offer a quiet blessing or a simple gift, perhaps a finely carved seal bone or a soft piece of fur. This ritual created a tangible web of connection, ensuring that from its earliest days, the infant knew the safety and support of an entire community. In a world without formal safety nets, these public celebrations functioned as the most vital form of social insurance. They publicly obligated every member of the community to the welfare of the new family, ensuring that in times of hardship or loss, no mother or child would face their struggle alone. Yet within this universal joy, our ancestors also had to make space for a profound and opposite experience, developing rituals to hold the overwhelming grief when birth ended not in life, but in heartbreak. The small terracotta goddess placed beside the stillborn infant was not just a gift for the afterlife. It was a desperate, loving act of nurturing a soul that had never known the warmth of the sun. In that quiet Mycenaean tomb, the parents were performing a ritual of profound care, ensuring their child would not journey into the unknown alone and unprotected. This tender treatment of perinatal loss reveals a heartbreaking universality, a shared human need to honor even the briefest flicker of life and to manage a grief that was, tragically, a common thread in the ancient world. In the crowded cities of Mesopotamia, a family might choose a different path for their mourning. They would carefully inter a stillborn baby beneath the compacted earth floor of their own home. This was not a hidden act of disposal, but a spiritual decision. They believed it tethered the child's fleeting spirit to the household, allowing it to remain within the safety of the family and encouraging it to return whole and healthy in a future pregnancy. The Romans, ever pragmatic in their legal and social structures, had specific customs for these losses. An infant who died before the official naming day, the dies lustricus, was not accorded the full, public funeral rites of an older child or adult. Their burial was often a private, simpler affair, reflecting a legal and social view that their personhood was not yet fully established in the community. Yet the very existence of these distinct rules shows a cultural recognition of the unique sorrow of this event. Why create a specific ritual if the loss was considered meaningless? Far across the ocean, high in the Andes, the meticulous burials of mummified fetuses with tiny, perfectly crafted offerings of food and miniature textiles speak a similar language of love and belief. The care taken in these preparations suggests a powerful conviction that these small beings had a spirit worthy of provision for an afterlife, that their journey was just as valid as any other. How did these quiet, often archaeologically subtle, rituals actually help a grieving parent? They transformed an invisible, isolating sorrow into a tangible, shared act. By washing the tiny body, wrapping it in a special cloth, or placing a figurine in its hands, a mother and father were able to express their love and fulfill their parental duty, even in the face of devastating loss. This process of ritualized care granted a measure of control in a situation of utter powerlessness, and it formally marked the child's existence, giving a family permission to mourn someone the wider world might never have seen. The memory of such profound loss, repeated generation after generation, undoubtedly fueled the development of countless other rituals aimed at securing fertility and protecting future pregnancies, a cycle of hope born from the deepest kind of heartache. The desperate hope for a child did not end with a single birth or even with a heartbreaking loss. It often spiraled into a new cycle of ritual and supplication, a determined effort to influence a future that felt terrifyingly uncertain. In the rocky highlands of ancient Anatolia, a woman longing for another baby might make a pilgrimage to a shrine of Cybele, the Great Mother. There, in an act of profound devotion and symbolic sacrifice, she would offer her own hair, cutting it and placing it before the goddess as she prayed for the gift of life. This was not a casual request, it was a transaction of the most personal kind, giving a part of her very self in the fervent hope of receiving a child in return. The psychological power of such a ritual is profound. In a world where the causes of infertility or miscarriage were complete mysteries, these deliberate actions gave women a tangible sense of agency. They were doing something, not just waiting passively for fate to decide their future. This need to actively court fertility manifested in countless ways across the ancient world. An Egyptian woman wishing to conceive might arrange to sleep overnight in a temple dedicated to Hathor, the goddess of love and motherhood. In the sacred silence, she hoped the deity would visit her in a dream, a divine incubation that would bless her womb and grant her conception. The air itself in those holy spaces was thought to be thick with generative power. Beyond temple visits, people turned to sympathetic magic, carrying the very symbols of abundance and life. Pomegranates bursting with countless seeds were almost universal emblems of fertility. Fish, which lay thousands of eggs, were another powerful symbol, and sweet figs, with their fleshy, seed-filled interiors, were eaten or worn as amulets to encourage a woman's body to mimic that same fruitful abundance. We see this deep belief in the potency of plants in the Hebrew Bible with the story of Rachel. Initially barren, she acquires mandrakes, a root famed throughout the ancient Near East for its fertility-enhancing properties. She then mandates her husband Jacob to lie with her, explicitly connecting the power of the plant to the act of conception. This reflects a widespread, ancient understanding of the natural world as a pharmacy of potential solutions for human struggles. Can you feel the immense weight of hope placed upon a simple root or a piece of fruit? These objects became physical anchors for a family's deepest desires, transforming abstract hope into a concrete strategy. But once a woman believed she was pregnant, the rituals did not stop. They simply shifted, moving from a plea for conception to a new, equally anxious effort to divine the outcome of the pregnancy itself, interpreting dreams and omens for clues about the tiny life growing within her. The dream of an eagle soaring high above the palace walls was not just a fleeting image to an Etruscan queen. It was a coded message, a divine dispatch concerning the future of the child stirring in her womb. To decipher its meaning, she summoned a haruspex, a priest trained in the sacred art of extispicy. In a solemn ceremony, this diviner would carefully examine the liver of a sacrificed sheep, reading its lobes and markings like a celestial map, cross-referencing its signs with the queen's vivid dream. A flawless, healthy liver might confirm the eagle as a symbol of royal strength and a glorious destiny for her son. A blemished or misshapen organ, however, could transform that same eagle into an omen of arrogance or a future conflict. This intricate practice reveals a profound belief that pregnancy, a state of becoming, rendered a woman uniquely open to messages from the gods. Her dreams were not her own. They were a public concern, a vital data stream about the lineage and fate of an entire community, demanding expert interpretation. Across the ancient world, cultures developed entire lexicons for this prenatal symbolism. In the markets of Alexandria, a pregnant woman might consult a well-worn copy of an Wanera Critica, a dream manual that functioned as a sort of ancient dictionary for the subconscious. These texts provided startlingly specific interpretations, dreaming of clear, flowing water or a field of blooming lotus flowers was an unequivocally positive sign, foretelling a smooth delivery and a child blessed with beauty and grace. But to dream of broken pottery, a snapped tree branch, or withered vines was a terrifying portent, suggesting a difficult labor, a stillbirth, or a sickly infant. Some entries were even more fantastical, proposing that if a woman dreamed of giving birth to a lion, her son would be fearless and noble, while dreaming of a serpent might indicate a child of great wisdom or, alternatively, of cunning deceit. Why did this need to seek prophetic signs become so universal during pregnancy? It was a psychological lifeline. In an era of profound vulnerability, where so much was unknown and uncontrollable, these interpretations offered a framework for understanding. They transformed amorphous fear into a specific symbol that could then be ritualistically confronted or appeased. This search for meaning extended beyond the dream world into the waking one. In a Mayan village, if a pregnant woman consistently heard the distinct call of an owl, a creature associated with the underworld, her family would not dismiss it as mere coincidence. They would likely consult a shaman to perform a cleansing ritual, believing the omen required active intervention to protect the unborn child from spiritual harm. Even a sudden, unseasonable rainstorm or an unexpected eclipse could be scrutinized for its prenatal significance. This constant, vigilant reading of the environment was never an isolated practice. It was intrinsically linked to a web of behavioral rules, a comprehensive system of taboos designed to shield the mother and her precious burden from every conceivable danger, both seen and unseen. Her plate was a carefully curated map of hopes and fears. In ancient Japan, a pregnant woman would meticulously avoid octopus and other slippery foods, terrified that their texture might symbolically cause her baby to lose its grip on life itself. At the same time, she would consume abundant seaweed, believing its deep roots in the ocean floor would help anchor her child's spirit to the world of the living. This was not mere picky eating. It was a powerful form of prenatal care where every bite carried spiritual weight and physiological consequence. Across the ancient world, these dietary laws were a universal language, a blend of keen observation, symbolic logic, and deeply ingrained superstition. The ancient Indian text known as the Sushruta Samhita provided remarkably detailed guidance, advising expectant mothers to favor sweet, nourishing foods like milk, ghee, and ripe fruits. They were to strictly avoid anything bitter, pungent, or excessively salty. This was not just about taste, it was about maintaining a balance of the bodily humors or doshas, with the belief that a mother's calm and balanced constitution would directly shape her baby's future temperament. Can you sense the profound responsibility placed upon the mother's choices? She was seen as the sole architect of her child's foundational health, both physical and emotional. Some taboos were born from a simple and sometimes startling logic of resemblance. In various African traditions, a pregnant woman might avoid eating eggs, fearing the food would cause her child to be born without hair. She might also steer clear of certain twin fruits, worried they could lead to a multiple birth for which the family was unprepared. Yet for every superstition, there was often a kernel of startling wisdom. The widespread practice of consuming dates in the Middle East, for instance, was a tradition passed down for millennia. Modern science has since confirmed that dates contain compounds that can facilitate cervical dilation and reduce the need for labor induction. Likewise, the universal prescription of nutrient-rich bone broth provided essential minerals like calcium and magnesium, crucial for building a baby's skeleton and preventing maternal deficiencies. How did these intricate dietary laws actually function? They were an ancient system of preventative health care, a way to control the uncontrollable. By adhering to a strict nutritional code, a woman and her community could feel they were actively participating in the pregnancy's safety, transforming passive anxiety into a series of deliberate protective actions. This conscious control over consumption was just one strand in a much wider web of behavioral restrictions designed to shield the delicate process of creation. The fear of marking an unborn child cast a long shadow over a pregnant woman's every waking moment. In Renaissance Florence, a noblewoman might be carefully steered away from a public execution or shielded from the sight of a beggar with a deformity, all because her culture believed a sudden shock or an ugly image could imprint itself physically upon her baby. This was the powerful, pervasive doctrine of maternal impression, an idea with deep roots in antiquity that held a mother's experiences, emotions, and even her glances were a form of prenatal sculpting. Her inner world was not her own. It was a workshop where a child's body and soul were being actively formed. In ancient China, this philosophy was codified into a precise regimen for cultivating virtue. A pregnant woman was instructed to sit upright, speak softly, and fill her ears with serene, harmonious music. She was to read classical poetry and avoid any violent or vulgar stories, all in the belief that she was literally transmitting moral character to the child growing within her. The physical body was subject to its own strict rules. The Hippocratic texts from Greece explicitly warned pregnant women to avoid sudden frights and intense anger, theorizing that extreme emotional states could upset the delicate balance of her humors and thereby harm the fetus. Can you feel the immense psychological burden of this responsibility? A woman's every reaction, her every moment of frustration or fear, was potentially a dangerous event. Yet within this web of constraints, there was also a recognition of her physical needs. While heavy lifting and strenuous labor were universally forbidden, gentle, purposeful movement was often prescribed. A Roman matron might be encouraged to take calm walks through her garden, and a woman in ancient India might perform specific, slow prenatal exercises designed to strengthen her body for the ordeal of labor. So, did these intricate rules empower women or imprison them? In one sense, they offered a framework for action, a way to actively participate in the safety and quality of her pregnancy. Following the rules gave her a sense of control and purpose, yet they also confined her to a narrow lane of acceptable behavior, constantly monitored by her family and community, her body treated as a fragile public vessel. This careful management of a mother's conduct was just one color in a much broader palette, part of a larger symbolic landscape where every element, especially color itself, was charged with meaning and purpose. That vibrant red silk was a shield woven from light itself. In the hushed chambers of imperial China, a newborn was immediately wrapped in swaddling clothes of the most brilliant crimson, a color so potent it was believed to blind malevolent spirits and confuse them, causing their gaze to slide right off the precious new life. This was not a question of aesthetics. It was a strategic defense, a visual shout of vitality in a world teeming with invisible threats. Red, the color of blood and life force, was universally employed to attract good fortune and loudly proclaim that this child was alive, strong, and fiercely protected. The symbolic power of color was a language every ancient culture understood. using specific hues in clothing, room decorations, and sacred objects as a form of non-verbal magic to influence the fragile outcome of birth. Walk into an Egyptian mammoth and your eyes would be greeted by soothing greens, amulets of turquoise and malachite, along with wall paintings depicting fields of papyrus, bathed the space in the essence of fertility, regeneration, and the lush new life promised by the Nile's annual flood. This color was a continuous, silent prayer for health and a successful delivery. A world away, in medieval Europe, the preferred hue was a soft, celestial blue. Elaborate christening gowns were most often fashioned in this color, directly linking the infant to the purity and divine protection of the Virgin Mary. It was a public declaration that the child was placed under a holy mantle of safety from its very first breath. And in West Africa, the deep, resonant blue of indigo held a different, equally vital power. A Yoruba mother's postpartum garments were frequently dyed this color, as indigo was believed to possess strong healing and protective properties, guarding her during her vulnerable period of recovery, while also symbolizing her profound transition into motherhood. Why do we see this persistent global pattern where red and white in particular hold such sway? Red consistently shouts of life, blood, and potent energy, a visual force field against decay and evil. White, in stark contrast, whispers of purity, cleanliness, and spiritual blessing, a blank slate for a new soul. These colors tap into something primal within us, a universal human vocabulary where visual cues are felt as physical and spiritual realities. This deliberate coloring of the birth experience was one more layer of control, an attempt to paint a safe, auspicious, and holy world into existence for those who needed it most. The shearing of a Spartan mother's hair was a public declaration. In a society that prized military discipline above all, this ritual was a powerful act of dedication. Her long locks, the symbol of her youthful maidenhood, were cut short and offered to the cool, flowing waters of the Eurotas River, a gift to the local nymphs and deities. This was not a punishment but a profound transformation. She was visibly shedding her former self, her individual beauty now channeled into the collective duty of raising the next generation of Spartan warriors or the mothers who would bear them. Her body became a canvas, its altered state broadcasting her new, honored role to the entire community. This need to physically inscribe the journey of motherhood onto the body was a global phenomenon. Among some plains tribes, the dried umbilical cord was not discarded. It was carefully preserved, sewn into a beautifully beaded amulet shaped like a turtle or a lizard. This small, wearable pouch was then attached to the child's cradleboard or clothing. The turtle, with its long life and deep connection to the earth, and the lizard, known for its vitality and regenerative abilities, were not just decorations. They were spiritual guardians, their symbolic essence meant to protect the infant and anchor its soul to the world. The amulet was a permanent, tangible reminder of the child's first physical connection to its mother, a lifeline transformed into a lifelong talisman. Far to the south, the Maya pursued a different ideal of physical transformation. Shortly after birth, while an infant's skull bones were still soft and malleable, they were gently pressed between two padded boards or bound with cloth. This cradleboarding created the distinctive, elongated head shape so revered in their society. To the Maya, this was not a distortion but a refinement. A high, sloping forehead was the very picture of beauty and nobility, a sign that the child was destined for a high status. It was a parent's deliberate act to sculpt their child's body in accordance with their culture's deepest aesthetic and social values, marking them as beautiful from their very first days. The focus was not always on the child, however. In several West African cultures, a new mother underwent ritual scarification. A series of precise, raised cuts would be made on her abdomen, back, or thighs, patterns that told a story of endurance, strength, and life-giving power. This was her permanent badge of honor, a painful but proud testament to the ordeal she had survived. These scars marked her as a full, respected member of the adult female community, a woman who had contributed to the continuation of her people. What do these permanent and temporary alterations truly tell us? They reveal a world where identity was not just felt but seen. A shaped head, a beadwork amulet, a series of scars, or shorn hair were all a language without words, a physical testament to the values a society held most dear: beauty, duty, protection, and belonging. These transformations were so significant, they often became the subject of the art that surrounded them, captured in sculptures and paintings to ensure their meaning would endure for generations. The cool marble of that Roman relief captures a moment of ultimate vulnerability transformed into a public celebration. A mother reclines on her birth couch, her form surrounded by attentive midwives, her successful delivery, and the family's profound joy carved in stone for all to see. This was more than a portrait. It was a permanent testament to survival, to lineage, and to social standing, a declaration that a new citizen had arrived safely. The creation of such art, from humble household figurines to grand tomb frescoes, served a triple purpose. It commemorated a deeply personal triumph. It honored the deities who were believed to have intervened, and it sometimes functioned as a form of sympathetic magic, where depicting a positive outcome was thought to help ensure one. In the sun-drenched households of ancient Crete, archaeologists have uncovered countless small clay figurines of heavily pregnant women or females actively in the act of childbirth. These were not decorative pieces. They were most often found carefully placed in domestic shrines, likely used as votive offerings to a powerful, unnamed mother goddess. Each one was a silent, desperate prayer, a physical representation of a woman's hope and fear, given as a gift to the divine in exchange for her safety and the life of her child. The Etruscans took this commemoration a step further, integrating the very scene of childbirth directly into their elaborate tomb paintings. For them, this fundamental, life-giving act was not hidden away. It was a crucial part of the family's story, a moment worthy of being carried into the afterlife and celebrated for eternity as the source of their enduring lineage. Can you feel the powerful statement being made? By placing birth alongside scenes of feasting and ritual in their tombs, they were asserting that the beginning of life was as sacred as its end. Far across the world, pre-Columbian cultures expressed this same reverence through the medium of cloth. Beautiful and intricate textiles were woven specifically for the purpose of swaddling newborns. But these were not plain, simple blankets. Their complex patterns, woven with vibrant natural dyes, told ancestral stories, mapped cosmological beliefs, or embedded symbols of protection into the very fabric that would touch the baby's skin. The child was literally wrapped in the culture's wisdom and hopes from its first breath. So how does this artistic drive to represent birth shape our understanding of its cultural importance? It reveals that our ancestors refused to treat childbirth as a private, medical event. They recognized it as a cornerstone of human existence, an epic drama of danger and love so critical to the community's survival that it demanded to be rendered in stone, clay, and thread. The legacy of these practices is not confined to silent museum displays. It echoes in the handmade christening gowns passed down through generations, in the meticulous pregnancy photoshoots of today, and in the small footprints pressed into clay as a modern keepsake. We are still driven by that same ancient need to make the miraculous tangible, to turn our most profound human experiences into something we can see and touch and remember. The scent of lavender in a modern birthing suite is an ancient ghost, a direct inheritance from Roman mothers who knew its power to calm the spirit. This is not a coincidence. It is the quiet, persistent echo of primal wisdom, a testament to the fact that our most contemporary practices are often just rediscoveries of what our ancestors knew in their bones. Look at the widespread use of water for pain relief today, with labor pools and specialized tubs becoming commonplace in hospitals. This is a practice with deep roots, finding its precursor in the warm baths used by Japanese mothers during early labor and the sacred sweat lodges of some Native American traditions, where water and steam were used to purify and ease the mother's passage. We are relearning the body's own intelligence. The renewed interest in delayed cord clamping, allowing the baby to receive a final, vital transfusion of placental blood, is a practice that would have made perfect sense to the Maya or the Norse, who understood the profound life force contained within that connection. The modern, albeit niche, practice of lotus birth, where the placenta remains attached until it detaches naturally, takes this reverence a step further, mirroring the ritualized respect ancient cultures held for the afterbirth, treating it not as medical waste but as a sacred companion. Even the very concept of a birth plan, a document outlining a mother's wishes for her labor environment, pain management, and immediate postpartum care, functions as a powerful modern ritual. It is our way of carving out a sacred, personalized space within the sterile, often impersonal world of institutional medicine, a direct descendant of the Egyptian practice of purifying the mammacy or the Greek circle of women. So, what can we truly learn from this deep well of ancestral knowledge? It is not about rejecting modern medicine, which has saved countless lives, but about reweaving the threads it severed. It is about remembering that birth is not just a physiological event, but a psychological and spiritual journey that thrives within a circle of support, that benefits from ritual, and that honors the profound, holistic transition of a new soul entering the world. In the quiet determination of a mother writing her birth plan, we see the same universal human desire for agency, for safety, and for meaning that once led another mother to hang an iron knife beneath her bed or to whisper a prayer to the goddess Taweret. The story of birth is and has always been the story of us. From the incense-filled chambers of Egypt to the moon-aligned ceremonies of the Maya, these ancient traditions reveal a unified human truth, a profound reverence for the fragile miracle of life itself. Our journey has taken us through a world where purification rituals cleansed more than the body, where the chanting for a goddess was as vital as any herbal remedy, and where an entire village celebrated the arrival of one new soul. These were not the random superstitions of a fearful people. They were intricate, sophisticated systems of knowledge, carefully designed to address the entire spectrum of the birth experience, from the raw physicality of labor to the deepest spiritual anxieties of the human heart. The meticulous herbal preparations of the Han Dynasty, the precise anatomical knowledge of the Mayan midwives, the communal safety nets woven in Akan villages, all of it speaks to an intelligence we are only beginning to fully appreciate. As we stand in our modern world with its brilliant technology and clinical precision, we can still hear the echoes of this primal wisdom. It whispers in the lavender oil used for calm, in the deliberate creation of a birth plan, and in the growing desire for continuous, empathetic support during labor. This is not a call to abandon medical advances, but an invitation to weave the old soul back into the new science, to remember that birth is, and always has been, a holistic passage. Let this exploration leave you with a sense of wonder for the timeless journey every new life takes, and perhaps a curiosity to rediscover the deep, human wisdom waiting in these age-old traditions. We would love to hear which ritual resonated most deeply with you, So please share your thoughts and join us for future journeys into the enduring mysteries of our shared past.